AM 650 presents You and the Law, a comprehensive look at everything you need to know about the law. Now, here's Sterling Fox.
Well, hello and welcome to this edition of You and the Law. I am joined in studio today with Scott Stanley and Kevin Gourlay from the law firm Murphy Battista, LLP. Gentlemen, welcome.
Good morning.
Scott, good to see you again.
Thanks for having me
Tell
back.
us a little bit about your firm. Tell us a little bit about Murphy Battista, LLP, please.
Well, Murphy Battista, LLP is a boutique firm. It's in downtown Vancouver. We're 12 lawyers, getting close to 50 support staff. And we act for regular people that have got claims against insurance companies. They're either personal injury claims, which is mostly what we do, but we also have a segment of our practice that deals with claims directly against insurance companies. And because we are essentially always fighting insurance companies, the firm is actually set up to do just that.
All right, now Kevin, you're joining us on You and the Law for the first time, so welcome to you.
Good to be here.
And like your pal Scott here, prior to joining Murphy Battista, you worked for the other side, as it were. Give us a little bit of that story.
Well, yeah, I spent the first couple of years of my practice acting for insurance companies, defending claims, some personal injury claims as well as disability claims and coverage claims, but I've made the switch over to the plaintiff side about 3 years ago, and all we do at Murphy Battista is act for insureds that have been denied or are otherwise fighting insurance companies.
Scott, is that pretty standard practice for companies like Murphy Battista who oppose the insurance industry? They are largely staffed by people with experience working for the insurance industry, so they know the playbook and a lot of what's likely to happen strategically?
Well, it's kind of the circle of life at Murphy Battista. Joe stole me from the firm that I stole Kevin from.
Oh, okay.
So it makes sense. Some of the best training you'll get is working for insurance companies. In fact, I don't know how you would be able to do a claim against an insurance company properly unless you'd acted for them.
Right. And know what to expect, therefore.
Gives you insight into how they think.
Right. And is that most beneficial before or at trial, Kevin?
Well, I think both. And when you're preparing a claim, you need to know how they're preparing it on their side so that you can be essentially a step ahead. And then once you get to trial, it's really the same thing. You know what they're doing because you were there at one point too.
Sure. Scott, talk to us about types of insurance and types of claims. We're going to spend some time here today going through all of this. So let's break it down a little bit up front, and then we'll concentrate on the various types as we go through.
Sure. Well, clients that knock on our door, phone us, they're going to have two types of problems with an insurance company.
Okay.
The first problem is the insurance company says, we're not going to pay for whatever reason. That's a denied claim.
Okay.
And the second problem is where the insurance company says, we'll pay, but we just don't want to pay as much as the person thinks we should.
So reduced amounts.
Reduced amounts.
Okay.
So it's basically broken down into those two categories. And the type of claims that we deal with are mostly property claims, people's home burns, floods, falls down. We deal with disability claims, life insurance claims, travel insurance, and then accidental death and disability.
Okay. And in terms of the types of claims, which is more likely, Kevin? Is it denied claims or reduced amounts? I would suspect reduced amounts. All right, we'll give you something, but you're not getting all of what you want. So is that usually the way it shakes out?
I'd say it's more commonly denied claims.
Really?
Because what you most commonly see probably are people with a disability claim, and you might be entitled to, say, $1,500 a month in benefits if you are disabled. The insurance company in that type of situation can't really say up front, we'll only give you 50 cents on the dollar. They just say, we don't believe you're disabled, we give you nothing. Down the road, if you get into litigation, then they might offer 50 cents on the dollar to try to settle the claim. But up front, usually on claims like that, you'll just get a straight denial rather than an offer of less than the full amount.
Scott, when a person is flat out just door slammed in your face, hits the tip of your nose, denied, go away, is that when you turn around and head for Murphy Battista and seek some legal counsel?
Well, I hope people are doing that. I mean, the reality of it is, Sterling, sometimes insurance companies are right. And based on the clients that phone us, my estimate is that with all other insurance claims, disability excluded, the insurance company is right about 80 to 90% of the time. And with disability claims, they're correct about 70 to 80% of the time.
Okay.
So sometimes they're right. But the person needs to get that figured out right away, because the last thing you want to do is get yourself launched into an expensive battle with an insurance company,
Right.
not knowing if you're going to win or not.
So how does that work? Give me for instance, give me an example if you can, how I feel entitled to a claim and the insurance company says, not on your life, and they turn out to be right. What would be the substance of that claim that I feel aggrieved enough to put forward, and yet there's nothing coming back from the other side, and they're right?
Well, what a lot of people don't understand, Sterling, or what a lot of people think, and they're wrong, is that when they're buying insurance from a big company, they're buying blanket protection. Mm-hmm. They're just this big company is going to go to bat for them and protect them. And these companies reinforce that by the way they brand themselves. When you look at it, the way insurance companies advertise, they make people feel safe, comfortable. You'll be looked after if you buy our products.
Wrap you in a warm, fuzzy blanket on TV.
Right, but that's not what happens. What you're getting is not blanket protection. You're buying a very specific legal contract that sets out what you get and, more importantly, what you don't get.
Right.
And their lawyers have gone through these things with a fine-tooth comb many, many times before they sell them. And there's a lot of really nasty exclusions in these policies that people are unaware of.
Oh, okay. So you may feel entitled to something, and you've paid premiums on this thing forever and a day, but when you present the bare bones to the insurance company, they point to something that you've signed off on that excludes whatever claim you're trying to make.
Exactly. I looked at
it. And you didn't have a clue in the first place.
Well, exactly. And the really nasty thing, Sterling, is that a lot of these insurance policies, they're designed almost to never pay out.
Right.
I looked at a disability policy in the last month where it would only pay out if this person was disabled from every aspect of their job. And it's almost impossible to be disabled from every aspect of your job. If you're disabled from 3 or 4 things or even one thing, you can't do the job.
Right.
But this policy was set up so that you couldn't get any money, zero, zilch, nothing, unless you were disabled from every aspect of the job. The policy would never pay out. No one would buy that if they knew what it was all about in the first instance.
So, Kevin, is ignorance an excuse in terms of taking the insurance company that you thought had you covered, but it turns out that you're excluded because of this detail that you didn't know about? You honestly, nobody told you about it. You thought you were covered, and then you advance your claim. You're flatly denied. And then I got to see a lawyer. So they sit down across the desk from you, and I just didn't know. Is that a legitimate position if you're going after damages?
Well, you never want to be in a position where you're just saying, I just didn't know. But much of the time, it comes down to interpreting the wording in the policy. We have people, for example, who come in and their home is burnt down, and the insurance company is saying, we don't have to pay this claim because you had gone away on vacation. And your policy had what's called a vacancy exclusion that says if you're not there for 30 days, we don't have any obligation to cover you. And oftentimes that sort of thing, people just have no idea. But
I've never heard of it before.
Well, I'm guessing that your homeowner's policy says that. However, there can often be differences of opinion as to what exactly constitutes vacancy, things like that. So you might not have known about that. The insurance company might say that your house was vacant, so we don't have to pay you anything. But they might be wrong about that, and that's why you need to look through the policy. You need to speak to somebody who can advise you about that.
So, okay, Scott. Oh, and by the way, friends, you're listening to You and the Law here on AM 650. I'm Sterling Fox. Scott Stanley and Kevin Gourlay are with us, lawyers from Murphy Battista. And Scott, in that instance where you just flat out, you signed on expecting one set of conditions, and it turns out no such conditions exist because the exclusions that you simply wrote yourself out of the script unknowingly. When you're in that situation, when you end up with nothing, and the insurance company can legitimately rather say, well, this person, there's no basis for this claim. This policy was never intended to cover this. Well, then why on earth is your broker somehow liable? The person who sold you the insurance and giving you perhaps a false expectation of coverage, is that person somehow or another suable, if there's such a legal word?
Often the claims we bring are firstly against the insurance company for coverage. If the insurance company's right, then we'll point our attention to the broker. I mean, the reality of it is, Sterling, if you want a trippy experience, go home, pull out your homeowner's policy, even if it's been sent
Now
to you.
I'm nervous already. I don't think I want to do it, but I know I'd better.
Go home and try to read it. It's like reading Melville. It's really, really hard to get through.
Right.
The thing that I always find funny is that insurance companies that write these policies are so complicated. These are big, sophisticated companies. They routinely have to hire these specialized lawyers to help them understand their own policies. It's not possible that a regular person could understand these things.
Well, you know what's kind of fun in a strange, twisted sort of way is the legalese in some of these documents is so convoluted that even a lawyer is going to have difficulty sorting it all out.
Well, and two different lawyers will say that it says two entirely different things.
Right.
And oftentimes when you end up in court, that's what it's about, is one lawyer saying these words mean this, and the other lawyer saying, no, these words mean that.
And so the judge is actually going to decide on whether a person receives benefits based on semantics?
Yes, and fortunately for the insured, there is a rule of law that says that ambiguity is in the contract, because the contracts often will have these ambiguities that can be construed either way, are supposed to be interpreted in favor of the insured rather than the insurance company.
Kind of to use a baseball analogy, the tie goes to the runner.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is that followed in court?
It is. That's it's supposed to be anyways, and in the run-up to court, that's often what much of the arguing is about.
Scott, what's the greatest volume? You've identified the types of insurance law and claims that you represent on behalf of your clients but what's the single largest group of clients? What sort of insurance claim work are you doing for them?
I think the largest volume of claims that we see are disability claims and travel claims. Older people that are going to mostly the U.S. and not having adequate travel coverage. Those are the two largest numbers of claims I think
These would be snowbirds then, people who may buzz off to the desert during the cold months of the year and what, don't buy the extended coverage or the extended medical plans that are so readily available. Do they do that and end up being less covered than they thought in the first place, or do they just not buy it in the first place?
Well, if you see a snowbird getting on a plane to go into the United States for a holiday, that's like a balloon in search of a pin. Because most of our snowbirds, I would estimate at least 20 to 30% of them don't have, they have coverage, they bought insurance or they have it, but about 20 to 30% of the time it's going to be invalid because of prior health problems.
Oh.
And they don't know that.
And who doesn't know that? The person who, if you go to BCAA or you can even go to some banks, for goodness sake, and buy an extended medical, and I always do wherever I travel, even if I'm traveling outside the province, I buy extended medical. So what might preclude me from having that coverage kick in a situation where I need it?
Well, if you have high blood pressure, or you've had a history of headaches or something like that, and you go into the States and you tell them that you have no cardiovascular problems, and you go into the United States and you break your leg and they go to the hospital, they can actually deny coverage because you made a mistake. You actually did have high blood pressure. You forgot to tell them that, and there's no coverage, even though it's unrelated to the actual high blood pressure.
And of course, this is the notorious land of pre-existing conditions in the first place, isn't it, Kevin?
Exactly, yeah. People often are doing their best to be honest when they're buying this type of coverage. But oftentimes, for example, if your medications have been changed in the last 2 years, that's something that the insurance company may say you had to have notified them about. You also might just not buy enough coverage. You'll see when you buy this type of policy that anywhere else in the world you can buy a policy for, say, $50, but in the United States, if you're going there, it's double or triple that because healthcare down there is so expensive.
Right.
You might think that you've got plenty of coverage and find out that you have a tragedy down there, some sort of an accident, and it's just not enough.
Mm-hmm. So, Scott, just before we take the break here, how about condense this into a message for any person, particular senior or anybody who's leaving the country, leaving the province, and going to at least be smart, or at least they think they're being smart, by buying some kind of extended medical coverage to take care of them while they're away from home. What advice do they need right now before buying that next little package?
Well, the first thing they have to recognize is that as Canadians, we have universal coverage. Everything's covered. And many of them think wrongly that when they buy travel insurance, it does the same thing.
Yes.
It doesn't.
Oh.
It absolutely does not. When a court looks at an exclusion, they construe these exclusions quite narrowly. So they work against the insurance company. Because of that, the insurance company drafts these things very, very broadly. And so the advice I would give to anybody that before they cross the border, make sure you've got proper coverage. Look at your policy. Go and talk to another broker. Go and talk to your doctor. Make sure that you've got proper coverage before you go to the United States. Don't just assume you have it, because my estimation, 20 to 30% of them don't.
Buying coverage that isn't going to cover you if something bad happens is no better than
just throwing
not buying
money
it
away.
at all.
Yeah.
Well, it's not throwing money at it. The insurance companies are delighted to sell it to you
Oh, of
because
course.
they're selling you something they'll never have to pay out on. So they're more than happy to sell it to these people.
And that's just the first little bit of free legal advice available on this edition of You and the Law. I'm Sterling Fox, in studio with Scott Stanley and Kevin Gourlay from Murphy Battista. And we'll be right back.
This is You and the Law. There's more of the show still ahead on AM 650.